What if nuclear war no longer required a human decision? What if retaliation could be triggered automatically, even if every leader was dead? During the darkest years of the Cold War, the Soviet Union built something few people knew existed. A system designed to guarantee one thing. If they were destroyed, the world would be destroyed with them. It was called perimeter. In the West, it became known as dead hand. The logic was brutally simple. If a nuclear strike eliminated Soviet command and control, if Moscow went silent, if sensors detected nuclear detonations on Soviet soil, a hidden system could automatically transmit launch orders to remaining missile forces. No president, no general, no last-minute hesitation, just machines confirming the end and ensuring there would be no survivors. At the height of Cold War paranoia, Soviet leaders feared one scenario above all: a surprise American first strike designed to eliminate them before they could respond. If that happened, deterrence would fail. So they built something designed to make deterrence unstoppable, even beyond death. During the Cold War, nuclear deterrence rested on a fragile assumption that leaders would survive long enough to retaliate. The logic of mutually assured destruction depended on second strike capability. If one side launched a nuclear first strike, the other had to be able to respond, even after absorbing catastrophic damage. But what if the first strike was designed to eliminate leadership entirely? What if command centers were destroyed before launch orders could be issued? What if the chain of command simply vanished? For Soviet planners in the late 1970s and early 1980s, this was not theoretical. It was a growing fear. The United States had invested heavily in precision-guided warheads, submarine-launched ballistic missiles, and strategic bombers capable of rapid deployment. American nuclear doctrine increasingly emphasized accuracy and decapitation potential, the ability to target hardened command bunkers and communication hubs. To Moscow, this suggested a dangerous possibility: a surprise attack that would kill Soviet leadership before retaliation could be authorized. If that happened, deterrence would collapse. And if deterrence collapsed, nuclear war could become winnable, at least in theory. The Soviet answer was radical. They began developing a system known internally as perimeter. In the West, it would later become known as the dead hand. The purpose of perimeter was not to launch a first strike. It was to guarantee a second strike, even if no one was left alive to order it. The system was designed as a backup of last resort. Under normal conditions, human leadership retained full control over nuclear forces. The General Secretary, senior military officials, and command structures oversaw strategic weapons. But if those structures were destroyed, perimeter could activate. The architecture of the system was both simple and terrifying. A network of sensors monitored seismic activity, radiation levels, atmospheric pressure changes, and communication lines. If nuclear detonations were detected on Soviet territory and high-level communication channels went silent, the system would begin a verification process. It would check whether Soviet leadership was still capable of issuing orders. If communication was intact, perimeter would stand down. If communication was severed, if Moscow was silent, the system could assume the worst. But it was not entirely automatic in its early conception. There were safeguards. Before activation, authorization from surviving officials was required during periods of heightened alert. Only if the system was placed into active monitoring mode could it proceed autonomously under catastrophic conditions. In that sense, perimeter was a conditional doomsday machine. Once armed, and if specific criteria were met, it could transmit launch commands through special command missiles. These were not standard warheads. They were communication rockets. If launched, they would fly over Soviet territory broadcasting coded signals to remaining missile silos, submarines, and mobile launchers. Those signals would order retaliation, even if the central command was gone, even if the political leadership had been annihilated, even if no human hand remained to press a button. The psychological impact of such a system was enormous. From a Soviet perspective, it restored strategic balance. If the United States believed it could eliminate Soviet leadership in a decapitation strike, Perimeter removed that incentive. There would be no advantage to striking first, because retaliation would come anyway. In theory, this strengthened deterrence. In practice, it introduced something deeply unsettling: the possibility that nuclear war could be triggered by a chain of automated logic under catastrophic conditions. Critics later described it as the closest real-world equivalent to a doomsday device, a concept popularized in fiction but terrifying in reality. Unlike a Hollywood scenario, however, Perimeter was not designed to destroy the planet out of spite. It was designed to prevent war by making it unavoidable if initiated. The system reportedly became operational in the mid-1980s, during one of the most volatile periods of the Cold War. Tensions were high. Able Archer 83 had just revealed how easily misinterpretations could escalate. False alarms had nearly triggered retaliation on both sides. And now, layered into that environment, existed a system that could remove the final human hesitation under certain conditions. To understand why this mattered, consider the speed of nuclear exchange. Intercontinental ballistic missiles launched from submarines could reach their targets in roughly 15 to 30 minutes. Land-based missiles even faster depending on trajectory. Decision windows were already razor-thin. Leaders often had less than 10 minutes to assess warning data before choosing whether to retaliate. The fear in Moscow was that a sufficiently precise American strike could eliminate the leadership within that window before retaliation was ordered. Perimeter was insurance against paralysis. But insurance of this kind carries risk. Sensors can fail. Communications can be disrupted by accident. Data can be misinterpreted. And in the chaos following multiple nuclear detonations, clarity would be nearly impossible. The designers of Perimeter understood this, which is why multiple layers of verification were reportedly included. It required confirmation of nuclear explosions, loss of communication with leadership, and pre-authorization during heightened alert states. Still, the existence of the system revealed something profound about the Cold War mindset. Both superpowers had built arsenals capable of ending civilization. But beyond that, they built systems to guarantee that even their destruction would not prevent retaliation. Deterrence evolved beyond human will. It became structural, mechanical, embedded in protocols and fallback systems. In the West, the discovery of Perimeter years later reinforced fears about automation in nuclear command and control. It raised ethical and strategic questions that remain relevant today. How much authority should be delegated to machines? At what point does fail-safe become fail-deadly? Does making retaliation automatic truly prevent war? Or does it increase the risk of catastrophe under extreme stress? Some former Soviet officials later claimed the system remains in some form, modernized and updated. Details remain classified, but the logic persists. As long as nuclear weapons exist, the incentive to guarantee second strike capability exists. And guaranteeing it may require systems designed to operate under the worst possible scenario. The dead hand was never meant to be used. Its power lay in its existence, in the message it sent. You cannot eliminate us without consequence. You cannot win by surprise. You cannot decapitate and escape retaliation. It was the ultimate extension of mutually assured destruction. Not just mutual destruction. Garantie de destruction. Even beyond death. Perimeter was never meant to fire. Its power was not in destruction, but in deterrence. It existed to send a message. Even if you destroy us, you cannot escape the consequences. In that sense, the dead hand was not a weapon of aggression. It was a weapon of inevitability. But inevitability carries its own danger. Because when survival depends on systems that remove hesitation, the space for human judgment begins to shrink. During the Cold War, leaders feared decapitation strikes. Today, the fear is different. It is no longer only about missiles. It is about speed, automation, artificial intelligence, cyber interference, data manipulation. Perimeter was built in an era of analog sensors and rigid command structures. Now, early warning systems are digital. Threat analysis is assisted by algorithms. Decisions are compressed into smaller and smaller windows. The logic remains the same. Guarantee retaliation. Prevent advantage. Remove doubt. But doubt, hesitation, has often been the final safeguard. History shows that nuclear war was avoided not because systems were perfect, but because humans questioned them. They paused. They hesitated. They chose not to act. The dead hand was designed for the moment when no one would be left to hesitate. That is what makes it so unsettling. It represents the ultimate extension of deterrence. A world where retaliation becomes automatic, where destruction becomes procedural, where survival depends on a machine completing its sequence. And the question it leaves us with is simple and uncomfortable. In a world moving toward faster systems, smarter algorithms, and automated decision-making, will we preserve space for hesitation, or will we build systems that no longer require it? Because in the nuclear age, the most powerful force protecting humanity has not been technology. It has been restraint. And once restraint is removed from the equation, what remains is inevitability.